African Ascent is delighted to introduce you to a prospective mayoral candidate, Mike Zwirko. Let me introduce Mike through his own words. This is what Mike said about Mike. Hey, he says, I'm Mike. I'm your neighbor, and I want to be your next mayor. Like my parents, I was born and raised in Western Massachusetts, and after graduating from College of the Atlantic in Maine, I moved to Boston to pursue a career in financial services. Needing access to public transportation, my wife Erin and I chose to rent an apartment in Melrose. After falling in love with the community, we saved all we could to build our lives here, and we bought our home on Derby Road. Since then, we've been active members of the community, serving on various committees, and as dedicated volunteers to civic organizations. He continues, I'm running to be a mayor because I know that I have the experience, skills, and drive to move us forward. Because I have worked in both local government and the private sector, I know how to create innovative solutions by disrupting the old mindset. The old mindset. We're going to talk about that in great detail. I don't know what Mike has in mind. I'm also an approachable leader who embraces new ideas and actively listens to all sides of an issue. I'm relentless, he says, in my pursuit of progress, and I'll be honored to lead this city as the next mayor. Facts about him: occupation, financial services, political experience, alderman at large since 2016. In 2018, he became a board president. Hobbies, quite a long list. I'll mention a few: backpacking, running, baseball, football games, so forth and so on. Welcome to African Ascent.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Mike. So, how long have you been in Melrose, Mike?
My wife and I moved to Melrose in 2006. We have been here for 13 years. We purchased our home in 2008. We've owned for 11 years. Yep.
And you want to be a mayor, correct?
That is correct. I would like to be the mayor of the city of Melrose.
Yeah. Why? There are so many other kinds of jobs that you could do with your financial background, but here you are running for the
yes, and it's a great question. I've been in financial services for all of my adult life. I first started at 24 years old. I've done it for 15 years. I love it. It's offered me wonderful opportunities that I've been able to seize. But I've also been elected official now. This is my 4th year.
Wow.
And I've seen the effect that we can have on the local level just as a member of the Board of Aldermen. Now with an open seat for the office of mayor, I think it's a great opportunity for me to take a shot and bring my talents of the private sector experience and also the limited government experience that I do have, kind of that hybrid to the city and lead from that office.
Okay. In what way do you think are you going to use this skill set, which you call financial services, of use to your mayorship?
So I think certainly when it comes to the budgeting process, no doubt. I will also add that my company, we employ this philosophy that's called Kaizen.
Oh, you have a company?
The company that I work at. I work at Fidelity Investments. It's not my company.
I see.
Yep. And basically what that is we're continually improving what we're working on through iterative changes. So where can we find efficiencies? Where can we find growth? This is what we do on a day-to-day basis. I've worked in the legal department for Fidelity Investments now for 13 years. I've gone through mergers and acquisitions. I've gone through reorgs. I've completely overhauled certain departments with our team to find out where things could be consolidated, what systems we have to bring into place to find those efficiencies. So I really think with the budget process, that's one area that would really be strong for me, finding out how we could maybe improve some of the departments and how they're functioning, the management thereof. Another thing that's really big right now that a lot of, it actually hasn't reached the public sector, but it has reached the private sector, is the use of data and data aggregation and the analysis of that data. So if you take the DPW, for example, the Department of Public Works, if you think about their work orders on a month-to-month basis, or seasonally, where are they targeting? You know, in the spring, they're doing a lot of cleanups after the winter. In the fall, they're getting ready for the winter. So how do we harness all of their work orders, all of their groups, all of their functions? How can we improve their process? I'd like to take that approach, data, analyze it, and have an output that allows us to see and hopefully streamline services.
So strictly speaking, really, so you're a number cruncher then?
I am a number cruncher. I work in a legal department, so I really work on regulatory affairs, but I do have a background in economics and policy. Yep.
And do you think it's enough to crunch numbers to be
No. You need to be interdisciplinary, for sure.
What do you mean?
I would say that you need to have a good amount of a skill set in almost every single discipline, right? Okay. So whether it's humanities, whether it's management, whether it's, you need to know enough about certain components to bring all of those together. You know, a 21st century mayor is not like the mayors that we've had 80, 100 years ago. It's a mayor that is nuts and bolts, boots on the ground. It's not just a figurehead. It's someone that you know, leads from the front. And I think that's a component that you need in these cities, because when you're talking about economic development, when you're talking about budgeting, when you're talking about staffing, you can't come to it without some background.
Now, tell me this.
Please.
I'm sure you know a few things about the other mayor, the other potential mayors, your competitors. What do you know about them?
They're all great people. You know?
In what sense? What makes
them
them
I know them all personally, number one. And I know most of them. I want to say there's only one candidate that I have known for less than 5 years. So I think the city is in a great position in the sense that there are 5, as of right now, there are 5 candidates that are all well able to jump into that role. I think we'll all bring a different perspective as to how we'll lead, but the voters of Melrose are going to have a very difficult choice this fall.
What are some of the perspectives in your judgment that these other mayors could bring, which is different from your perspective?
Well, we run the gamut in terms of our age. We run the gamut in terms of our professional background. Another great statistic is that right now there are more females running for the office of mayor than there are males. And I think that's a great thing. That's, you know.
How many are men?
We have 3 women that are running.
3, Monica,
yep,
Nishan, and
Jackie. Yep. And then Paul and myself.
Do you think there are leadership differences between men and women?
No.
You don't think
I don't.
so?
No.
You don't think there are certain qualities that women and women only have, which you may not have as a man? If that's the case, what would that quality be?
Well, I mean, I can't really answer the question only because I am a man, and I work with women now. The leader of my company is a woman. Actually, my industry, 98.6% of my industry are companies that are run by men. We are the outlier.
I see.
For 13 years at Fidelity Investments, I have only worked under women as my manager.
Are you comfortable working with women, Michael?
Absolutely. I mean, women are some of the people that I look up to in this world. And matter of fact, Rachel Carson, when I went to college, she wrote Silent Spring in the late 60s. That book alone was probably the largest catalyst for the environmental movement that this world has ever seen. And if it wasn't for her research and her stepping outside of the box and really looking at the impacts of DDT and the downstream effects that went from streams all the way up to birds and their prey, we would be living in a much different world right now.
I see.
So I actually think of many of them as groundbreakers.
Incredible.
Yep.
Now, let's talk about leadership qualities.
Sure.
What is your leadership quality? What kind of leader do you aspire to be as a mayor? What kind of skill sets beyond number crunching, which is impressive, or to dignified
Thank
more financial knowledge to the mayorship. Because as you said, the mayor has to be hands-on.
Yep.
The mayor has to walk back and forth from place to place, even spend time at coffee shops, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, schools, speak to the elderly,
Yep.
hang out with them,
Right.
collect data, and so on. It's not simply a matter of sitting in your office and then crunching numbers and spending time on the phone. It's much more than that. Am I right?
You are 100% right. And what I would say is the more time a mayor is spending in their office, the less of a job they're doing that's going to improve this community. You need to be out in the street. The type of leadership that I bring, there's a very good novel written about 5 years ago by Doris Kearns Goodwin called Team of Rivals.
That's right.
I am a huge fan of that book and that approach to leadership. Just to give a quick summary, it's a story of how Lincoln, President Lincoln, back in 1860s, worked to pass the Emancipation Proclamation, which was a huge moment for this country. President Lincoln was a very smart man that knew that he didn't have all the answers. He knew that he didn't have all the skill sets. So what did he do? He brought in people into his cabinet that disagreed with each other. But through disagreement, through working through that iterative process, you're able to come to some form of a solution. And it's a solution that isn't surrounded by sycophants. It isn't surrounded by people that are yes men or yes women. It's organically working through the problem to find out what ultimately will work. Mm-hmm. I am not the monopoly on ideas. I know that. I will lead. I will make a decision. I will stick by that decision. If that decision is right or wrong, I will live by that. But I will get there in a fashion that is going to eke out all of the components to that problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are some of the major issues now that you've worked as the president of the board? You've worked as an alderman, city councilor, another name for it. What are some of the issues that you have diagnosed in mayor roles that need to be attended to by you as a mayor?
Yeah, I think,
and your
and the
skill sets.
Yeah, I think there's two questions there, one in alderman and mayor. And what I would say is communication is very key. Now, that's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and what ultimately does that mean, right? Yes. And it goes back to the point where I said that a mayor needs to be outside of his or her office. You need to communicate with people, and it needs to be a two-way street. You can't just file out some dictum and say, here's the information that you need to know. You need to ask people, how are we going to do this? What are your thoughts on this? And then ultimately you come to a decision. So you hold Q&A sessions with the public. You open up the government. You explain what's happening at the governmental level. You don't leave it for people to find their own way. This is a participatory democracy, and we need people to participate. However, we have to cultivate that participation and allow people to have a stake in the process. If they see City Hall as someone that's avert to what it is that they would like to see, over time, that's going to break down. You're going to have apathy, and you're not going to have people paying attention or wanting to improve their own community. You need to bring everybody in. And that's renters, that's owners, that's as much diversity as possible. New people, old people, get their feedback. That's the best way that you're going to be able to move this community forward, in my opinion.
Okay. And as you know, housing is a major issue.
Major.
In
Massachusetts.
Major. In Massachusetts, but particularly in mayor roles, I think, to stick to mayor roles. Mm-hmm. Taxes continue to go up.
Yep.
This was particularly the case with the override issue.
Correct.
In which the main issue for many seniors who depend on Social Security was that their taxes were going to be raised if they were to vote for that particular issue. Yep. As a consequence, most of them became resentful when the bill passed because they saw their taxes going up.
Certainly.
The same is true about water bills.
Yep.
My water bills, for example, keep on going up. I pay close to $150 a month. And I always wonder why, because I don't even shower more than once a day. It's not as if I'm abusing water. And yet,
you're not wasteful.
I'm not wasteful. I'm very economical, as a matter of fact. And independent of that, the bills keep on going up and so on. how are you going to change this in Melrose? Because this in particular is affecting the city because the old timers are being driven out of Melrose.
Yep.
And the demography is changing for good reason because it's young doctors, young lawyers,
tech workers,
who are moving into Melrose.
Sure.
And all those who fell in love with Melrose, with its shops, with Main Street, so forth and so on, are being forced out of the city.
Yeah, these are good.
How are you going to change this?
What I would say is this problem isn't unique to Melrose. And it's also not unique to our history. 20 years ago, Melrose looked a lot different than it looks today. And 20 years from now, it's going to look different, right? So everything is always going to change. There's no doubt about that. The question is what type of value are we giving the residents who live here? Do they have a safe community? Do they have good schools? Is this a place where they want to live? And if maybe they've never come from Melrose like myself, but make it their home. You know, this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And all those raises, the override, the water bills, those affect me just as much as they affect you. And you know, I deal with that as well. And you know, people often say, well, you know, you're not on a fixed income. And I'm not on Social Security, but I can assure you that you know, my income doesn't rise that much each year either, right? And we're all feeling this. So you need absolutely. And within the 128 corridor of Boston, we have a huge issue with housing. We have an issue with housing here, the affordability. Rents are more than most mortgages these days. That's a problem. We need to find ways in which we can bring down costs in other areas. A city like Melrose, with the access to public transportation that we have, that can alleviate your commutes, right? So that can bring down costs in other areas. But we're also allowing, like I said, getting back to the value component, we do have good schools and schools that are improving. We do have a downtown that is improving. It's going through some development effects right now, but they are improving. And we want residents to know that this money that we've asked for is going directly to the causes that we intended it to go to. This is not, we're not doing this to save ourselves from financial ruin. We're actually doing this to invest in our community. And that's a really important change that went through when we dealt with the override last fall.
But as you know, Mike, the schools in Lexington and Winchester, when we compare them to Melrose, are doing considerably better.
Correct.
Winchester and Lexington and so on produce Harvard material types of students. Do you have any statistics about the school systems in Melrose and whether or not they produce?
So we have had some Ivy Leaguers. I will add that
impressive numbers. Do you think? Or?
I don't know in this year's class. I know that in the class prior, we had a couple of people that went to one person that I know that went to Harvard. Yeah, but I also think that you know, I don't put a lot of stock into the Ivy League schools. I mean, obviously, if someone comes from Harvard, that's the best institution arguably in the world. Obviously, Oxford and Stanford and others, Yale, are great schools. You mentioned Lexington and Winchester. Their tax rates are much, much higher than ours. Property taxes in those two communities, it's somewhat of an apples to oranges comparison. What I would say is the value that you get here in Melrose is you do get a good education, and many of the children go on to secondary education that are universities. We have other kids that enter the military service. We have some kids that go to the vocational school in Wakefield. We also have some kids that decide that they want to enter the trades. We are a college preparatory district, and we will continue to be that. But I don't think the focus necessarily should be on how many children are graduating and going to Ivy League schools. I think, you know, success is determined by a whole multitude of factors. I did not go to an Ivy League school. I did go to a public school. But if you're giving kids and our children, who are our students, the tools that they need to adapt to the world that's existing, because quite frankly, the world's changing so quickly that some of the jobs that they're going to have don't even exist today. So what type of education are we giving them? That's where we really need to focus. If the bellwether that we're grading our schools on are where they go to college, I think we've lost our focus, because then we might be focusing more on just exams and tests and rote memory, when we should really be focusing on more interdisciplinary studies, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, look at downtown.
Yep.
The YMCA area in particular, and the congested parking spaces.
Yep.
how are you going to address this? Each and every time I go to the Y to work out, it takes me 10, 15 minutes, sometimes longer when I'm in a hurry to look for a parking space because there are no parking spaces in that vicinity. I understand that there are some underused parking spaces nearby, but that is asking too much from our passengers to circle around looking for underused parking spaces when parking spaces should be conveniently available to them right to the next to the places to which they are going. In this instance, the Y, for example. How are you going to address this?
Yeah, you made me think of a Yogi Berra quote that says, nobody goes there anymore because it's too busy. Melrose is a victim of its own success. You can't find parking around YMCA because it's very popular. Parking spots are convenient when they're open. And as you've indicated that they're not. I would say that they're not in proximity to the core downtown area of the YMCA region. If you were to drive a little further north on Main Street up by the fire department, by the apartment building across the street, the municipal lot behind Memorial Hall, chances are more than not, you'll be able to find a spot. Will you find one that's direct proximity to the YMCA? I would challenge that that's a little bit more difficult. Parking is a problem in Melrose. There's no doubt about it. There is also no easy solution. It's the same question when traffic comes up. Back in 1970, one family would own a station wagon, and the 5 members of the family would get in the station wagon, and that would be the one car. Now a family of 5 has 5 cars. So the economy of scales have changed in terms of cars being more affordable, how they're utilized. Parking is an issue. I think if we can enhance the way that we can get people to certain areas of the city, whether it be through multimodal transport, bikes, shared facilities, people utilizing Uber more if possible, walking, it helps. I know that that's seasonal, that in the winter, folks aren't going to do that as much. But we're a very dense community. We have very limited parking spots. We need to ensure that there's enforcement, because if there's not parking enforcement, someone will park behind the YMCA for the day, and who's going to get them to move? If I know that I'm going to be ticketed or towed, chances are I'm going to be more fastidious in where I choose to park.
Yeah, but you're not just going to leave it at that. You're going to have a vision to address it. What is your vision going to be?
Well, the vision to address it is really to work again to readdress the parking program that we enlisted a couple of years ago. That was really towards the merchants, getting the merchants to work with the Chamber of Commerce, work with their employees to not park downtown, because every time they take up a spot either behind Shaw's or behind the Y, they're actually kind of shooting themselves in the foot, right? A customer can't park, but an employee can. So what we've done is we've made sure that they have ample parking down on Berwick Street, or that they park behind the municipal lot behind Memorial Hall. I think we need to readdress that. I think that we did it and we kind of let it go. I also don't think that over the past couple of years, there's been the political courage to address parking. And that can even be residential parking too. It doesn't just go to the downtown area. This is, and getting back to what I said earlier about the team of rivals, this is one area that I would really like to have a lot of open meetings about, solicit some feedback. Look, I don't have the monopoly on ideas. If people have a solution to the parking problem, I will absolutely entertain it. I think it's a very difficult solution to have given the amount of cars that we have in the area. And I would also say that this isn't a problem that's unique to Melrose. Somerville has parking issues. Medford has parking issues. Malden has parking issues. Winchester in their downtown, they have parking issues as well. So there are ways to alleviate it, but it is a problem that's going to be very difficult to solve.
Now, let's talk about developers. How are you going to direct developers to invest in areas that you as a mayor think they need to attend to, instead of coming with your own visions and literally imposing it on the city?
Right. It's a very good question. Yeah. So I think
because that's a private domain.
Absolutely,
they
right.
Could always
they can kind of do what they want to do.
Exactly.
Right.
But as a mayor, I think I would like you to become a dialogical mayor, a mayor who challenges developers.
I think that that's fair. And I think that we need a mayor. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you need a mayor that's not only an ambassador to your city, but also a cheerleader. You need to have stark conversations with your developers and telling them that this is the vision that we want. We want foot traffic downtown, okay? What brings foot traffic downtown? Restaurants, art shops, cafes, because retail is dying. We know it's dying. I mean, look at the Square One Mall. I mean, Sears is, I don't know how long Sears is going to be around, right? So what type of economic development is it that we're looking for? I think a great example is what happened up in Franklin Street about 2 years ago. The state was offering some grant money. We put in some benches, some flower boxes. We did some bump outs, some new sidewalks. We enhanced that area, and that will bring commerce. Yeah. There are some areas of the city, West Wyoming near Pleasant Street, that could use a makeover.
Yes,
absolutely. There's a building across from the barber shop and the ice cream store that has ultimately remained vacant for a large period of time. Yeah. You talk to those owners.
By the railroad tracks,
correct.
For example.
Right.
You can use that very inventively.
Absolutely, you can.
Little shops.
You need to have conversations with the business owners. And what you also do is, from a long-term vision plan, you sit down with your city planner and your assistant city planner, and you say, okay, let's look at the map of Melrose. Where do we think we could actually bring in some good development? Now, you could have a property owner that doesn't intend to move, doesn't intend to sell, doesn't intend to change. That's okay. But you know what you do is you create a line of communication. You develop a relationship with that individual or individuals, and you say, if you're getting ready to sell, or if you're thinking about doing something, let us know. We'll work with you. By knowing that, instead of a developer coming in, knocking the building down and wanting to do X, you've already lost. You can't start over. So I like to call it shopping in your own closet. Right? So you work with the parcels and the business owners that you have, always have communication with them in concert with your Chamber of Commerce. What is the vision that we want to have? What are the businesses that we want to bring? And you go hard at that. And you say, this is the community that we want to have. We have a very affluent community here in Melrose, and we're giving businesses an affluent market, right? So if I want to open up a restaurant or a burger bar, I know that the people that are going to be my patrons are going to be able to afford it. So I want to be here. But how do we, as an ambassador to this city, lead there? I think that's exactly what you do. Those ways are going to help foster that. And also, developers talk. You know, everybody in every industry talk. And if they know that there's a mayor that they can not only work with, but that has a vision, that's going to bring those people to town. It will. And if they know that there's a mayor that's against certain things, they know that if they come in, that they're already going to be, I wouldn't say an argument, but an ideological disagreement. But you need to let that be known. You can't just have some ad hoc plan to development where they knock this building down and then this goes up and they knock this building and hope that the market rescues itself. You need to guide it.
Incredible. And now I'm thinking about the future of what developers must be planning with the Papagino's site now.
Yeah, right.
Do you have any idea?
I don't, but I'll tell you that's a great site.
The building right next to it. It's a
great site. There is a culvert underneath that building, so there may be some concerns about erecting a facility above it. I'm not too certain. But what I like about that, there's a little park right on the corner of Upham and Main Street. Grove and Main Street.
Grove Street, yeah.
And there's a flagpole too. Where that park is, the building kind of has a big bow window to it. I would love to see that window kind of open up, right? Nice flow view of that downtown area. There's already a kitchen in that building. Obviously, there's ample seating because it was Papagino's.
Precisely.
Quite frankly, I think we could use another restaurant in Melrose. We have another one that's coming here in August.
Stearns is closing, as you know.
The Rising Eagle is opening in August. Yeah, they're targeting the end of August. But we could use another restaurant. I mean, there's certainly a market for it.
How about liquor stores? We don't have enough liquor stores.
We have the ability to have 3. We have 2 right now, and they're beer and wine only.
Only.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Could we include liquor to them?
We could. If we were to.
Would you support that?
I would. I would support it. But it would need to be done in a tasteful way. And what I mean by that is I would not want nips, those small plastic liquor bottles.
Yes.
I would mandate that the smallest bottle of liquor that could be sold would be 1 liter. I don't want somebody going into a corner store, putting a pint in their back pocket, and then going to the high school football game. I don't want contraband. So if you put a limit on what can be sold, if you're done it in a tastefully way, upscale liquor. So we're not selling just, well drinks. You can put it in the facilities that we have that are already selling food, that are already selling wares, and you can buttress their services by having some hard alcohol that is available for purchase.
How about cinemas, Mike?
Well, I don't know if we have the space.
Yeah. Do you think we could create a space?
What would be great? And the Melrose football program does this. They have an outdoor screen that they blow up.
That's
and they do movies. And if we did movies on the common, right? That's a great community event.
You're right.
An economic development director. If we had an economic development director, they could share the vision of the mayor. They could work with the developers that we've already talked about, and they could bring maybe beer gardens to the common, beer gardens to El Pond, movies at night, right? There's tons of opportunity that we haven't even tapped into. And I think those are things that we need to think about. In terms of a cinema itself, I don't think we have the space.
I see.
I don't think we have the space. I'd love to have a rink in town. We don't have the space.
Yes,
there used to be one,
That's right. Exactly. All right. Now, let's diagnose Melrose before we can speak about new horizons for Melrose.
Sure.
Like a good doctor. Diagnose the city for me. What does it need? What does it not need? What is working? What is not working?
So I think I'll take what's not working.
Okay.
I think we need to focus on economic development more than we are,
okay.
right? And in all the ways that I just described, I think that that's an area that we're lacking. Now, Melrose is going to remain 95% residential. We are who we are. We are a bedroom community. People move here. We don't have access to the highway. There's not a highway ramp right off of Melrose. We're kind of inoculated from conservation lands and a lot of the buzz around us. You can get to Route 1, but Route 1 isn't in Melrose. You can get to 93, but 93 isn't in Melrose. So we know that we're a bedroom community. We know that we're a place where people want to come, live, and raise a family. And that's not going to change. But we're not taking advantage of expanding our commercial base when we should. And that's something we need to focus on. What Melrose is doing really well with? I think that not only the quality education that we have, but the quality of our parks. We're a very walkable city. We are putting in more sidewalks where we can. We have work to do, there's no doubt about it. But the improvements that have been made to Pine Banks Park, the improvements that have gone up around all of our other outdoor recreational facilities. I think that's where we're really tackling some good work. And we have further improvements to come. Mount Hood, it's a great that brings in revenue for us. But not many communities, A, have a municipal golf course, or B, have one that's as popular and affordable, quite frankly. That's conservation area too. Yeah, it's a golf course, but there's a lot of also walking trails up there, and we benefit from a lot of that. I think right now, with the influx of newer people that are moving, we need to take advantage of our talent pool and our diversity. And like I said earlier, the Melrose 20 years from now is going to be a lot different than the Melrose that looks today. And I think that we need to employ that where we think the makeup of our community is going to be. We need to make our police and fire departments more diverse. We need to make our educators more diverse. We need to have translators on our police department. I don't think we have anybody on our police department that can speak Mandarin. That's a problem. No, but I'm serious. That's a problem. I mean, if there's an incident, a motor vehicle accident or worse, and it's a resident that English isn't their first language, how can the police assist that couple, those individuals, if they can't speak the language? Bringing in an interpreter by phone is difficult enough. So we need to understand that the world is changing, and we need to change with it. 20% of all marriages today are interracial. I think something like 40% of all marriages are interreligious. Right? So Jewish people are marrying Christians, and Christians are marrying Hindus, and all this. So there's just a big mix that's going on. And 20 years from now, all those demographics are going to be exacerbated even more. That's a good thing. Let's take advantage of that. And let's get the benefit from it where we can.
Okay. And what is in the horizon for Melrose, in your judgment?
I actually am very bullish. I like where things are going in Melrose. I do. I will say that I think we're closer to the next recession than we are from the last one. Really? We've had 10 years of economic growth. I mean, we're about to, in July, that will be the longest period of economic growth that this country has ever seen, ever. That's wild. That's a crazy statistic. That's why I say we're probably closer to the next recession than we are from it. But Melrose is always going to be strong. We're in close proximity to Boston. We have access to ample public transportation. even when the market crashed in 2008 and 2009, property values did go down, but they didn't go down as much as they did in other areas. So Melrose has a lot of value to offer. I think that we need to focus on our schools. We need to focus on our economic development. We need to be fastidious when it comes to our finances. And we need to plan for the long term, because we've neglected in some areas that are actually going to cost us money now, whether it's new public safety buildings, improvements to our library, improvements to our pipes, our infrastructure. Those are things that we really need to address. That's probably going to be the biggest challenge over the next 5 to 10 years.
Michael, tell me this. Why do people think Melrose is a hot city? What is so hot about Melrose? It's one of the hottest cities in the U.S. It was written about.
Yep.
So.
It's a community where, I tell this story a lot. If you live in a community like Reading, which is a great community, nothing against Reading, you go home when you get there. If you drive, it takes a long time. If you take the commuter rail, you're a prisoner to the schedule of the commuter rail. You get home and you're in your house. You might have a nice house. You might have 3/4 of an acre, but you don't really interact with your neighbors. In Melrose, we're so dense that you come home, you see your neighbors outside, you're interacting with them all the time, you're walking to your neighborhood school with your children. We're very walkable. You're either biking to the T, taking a bus to the T. You see the same people on your bus. You see the same people on the T. You see the people at the farmer's market when you get off the commuter rail. The access, the proximity to Boston, the density of our community, people are involved. You can't go to Shaw's and get in and out in 20 minutes. If you're in Shaw's or Whole Foods, you inevitably are going to bump into a neighbor, a friend, a classmate, and that's the type of community that Melrose has. It's very tight-knit because we're very close in proximity and also in terms of our history and our makeup.
Okay. All right. Now, Mike, let me be a little bit severe with you.
Sure.
But I don't see too many people who look like me in Melrose.
Okay.
Wherever I go, I am an aberration. I'm the other. I'm stared at as if I'm not supposed to live in Melrose.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to set the tone from City Hall to change this?
Yep.
So that individuals who look like
yep.
me could consider moving to Melrose and feel as comfortable as they do in communities that are preponderantly filled with people who look like them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it is the case that Melrose is a hot city, shouldn't it be hot for everybody?
Yep.
How are you going to address that?
Well, first, let me say that it saddens me that you feel that way and that you might have been treated that way. Mm. So it's unfortunate that that's occurred, and it shouldn't. Mm. And I think this is exactly what an executive officer of a municipality needs to do, and they need to lead on it. And they can lead in a multitude of ways. How do we hire new workers here? How do we do it? Do we know that our pool is diverse? Do we make the process to apply anonymous? That way we don't have a bias towards someone's name or gender or age. Can we anonymize that process? Are we only going out to Melrose? Are we only going out to certain regions looking for employees? Are we going statewide? Are we going to trade organizations? What types of trainings do we offer our employees? And that means school employees as well. Do we have sensitivity trainings? Do we have inherent bias trainings? What types of avenues do we have to improve relations with a community that we might not be too familiar with? How do you, the more time you're spending in your office, the worse job you're doing as a mayor.
You got it, Mike.
Okay. Now, these are just some solutions.
Yes,
okay. It's incumbent on all of us to break down any inherent biases that we have and try to approach others, right?
Mm-hmm. Let me make it even more concrete for you.
Sure.
Each and every time I walk to City Hall, I'm terrorized.
Really?
The place is cold, extremely cold. It's filled with people who look like one another. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly someone like me walks in and one doesn't feel welcome. Mm-hmm. This is City Hall, mind you,
right,
where everything begins. Mm-hmm. And you as a mayor has an obligation to take this seriously.
That's correct.
Where are you going to begin? What are you going to do?
Well, again, if the mayor has an opportunity to hire staff, that's an opportunity right there. You lead from example. Who is it that you're hiring? Who's that you're putting in your office? What are the outreaches that are going to be made? Really, I mean, if our motto is going to be one community open to all, it should start at City Hall. I will add that I do think that this community does make great efforts. I think the Human Rights Commission alone, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we didn't have a community iftar. We do now, right? The work that we do on Martin Luther King Day weekend, that's actually a weekend of activities, right? There's service days as well as on Martin Luther King Day evening, we have a community dinner. I think that if no effort is being made, you're on the wrong path.
Good man.
But I do feel that we are trying to make efforts. I don't think we're going far enough, but I think we can, and again, you see, all you need to do is look at our elementary schools. Look at the makeup of our elementary schools, because that's where our community is going to be in 20 years.
My son goes to Winthrop School.
Perfect.
He's 7 years old.
Yep.
He loves it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. All I can say is you lead from example, and I have tried to not only broaden my own worldview, break down my own inherent biases. I have taken the White People Challenging Racism course. I took that in 2017. That was a very emotional course for me. I say this often, I wasn't born on third base, but I certainly was born on first. I'm aware of where I came from. I'm aware of the opportunities that have been provided to me just for who I am. But I take that very seriously.
I know you do.
Because with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And it's incumbent on me to make sure that people not only feel welcome here, but also feel a part of the community. It's not only feel welcome, because you can welcome people all you want. Be nice to them on your first interaction.
Precisely.
You need to be nice to them on their seventh interaction.
Precisely. And to give you a concrete example, the other day, I walked into City Hall. I wasn't in my suit. Why should I be in my suit all the time?
Sure.
I was wearing a T-shirt because I had just come from the gym. I walked in. I asked someone on the right-hand side of the building when he entered Main Street. How little did I know that I was speaking to a city clerk.
Oh.
I wasn't treated well. I was heartbroken. Because the response was to the image, not the humanity. It shouldn't really matter how I'm dressed. I shouldn't be treated different.
That's great.
When I'm in my suits now. I should be treated as a human being.
That's right.
In any shape
with
or
respect.
Form. With respect.
Absolutely.
That did not happen. And that image still lingering in my mind. It hurt.
Have you been in City Hall since?
No. This was about a week ago.
Okay.
I was not encouraged to go back, other than to pay my bills. Even there, when you go to pay your bills, the first rule with customers is to extend a smile to human being. Cold, angry, judgmental, to use your term, biased. They should not be. So I'm taking this interview with you seriously. I'm going to count on you if you become a mayor to take this seriously.
I'm going to ask that you do, because it is serious, and I do take it seriously. One thing I would say is I think that we need in City Hall a virtual suggestion box, right? An anonymous one. I think, so for example, the way you were treated, it's which is really weird when it comes to like if one has been biased against, it's actually incumbent on the victim to bring it up, right? That's kind of strange, because you would never, in any other situation, you would never ask the victim to.
Precisely, that's right.
So let's create an environment where, let's say you go home and you're sitting in your chair and you say to yourself, geez, that interaction I had today is still stuck in my head, and I didn't really like it. I mean, you're a week ago and you're still talking about it, right?
Yes.
Where can you go?
I've written about it. I happen to be a novelist.
Okay.
So I've documented it.
Oh, good.
As a matter of fact.
But where can you go to explain this interaction other than right here, right? I mean, you're in a unique position, right?
Precisely.
If we had a virtual comment box where things come in, you can look at that and say, all right, again, team of rivals. I don't know what your interaction is like unless I'm told, but you might not feel compelled to do it in a public fashion. You might want to do it anonymously. Let's allow that to occur. Let's create an avenue where those concerns can come in.
Excellent.
That's one.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. All right. Now, we're going towards the end. What do you love the most about Melrose?
Community. I know that's probably an easy answer, but if you go to a football game on a Friday night, you know, the stands are filled. There's a lot of pride to be Melrosian. When something happens, like we just saw down on Brazil Street earlier this week, you know, the community rallies around each other. Again, I think it's because we live so close and there's, you know, it's a very small town atmosphere, but that community is very important. And so often this community steps up and they support their neighbor. They donate to a specific cause. The Melrose Alliance Against Violence, their annual domestic violence awareness walk is attended by upwards of 1,000 people. Any 5K that you have, whether it's the firefighters 5K, the Mother's Day 5K, you know, a Prevent Cancer 5K, Alzheimer's 5K, people are showing up, people are involved. Yeah. It makes you happy to live here. You know, it makes you not want to move, you know? And when you were talking earlier about the rising costs and the effect on seniors, at the same sentence, a senior citizen will tell you, but I love it here.
Yes.
But I love it here, right?
I love it here too.
and we do have the opportunity to improve it, but at the same time, it's just so nice to see the community come to bat for themselves.
Yeah. We have 4 minutes left. Time just flew because we're having fun.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Now, we have about 4 minutes left. Use it in any way you want. Make a case for yourself or why the city of Melrose should choose Michael and not anybody else.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for the discussion. As you said, we're just sitting in a living room having this discussion. Listen, this is going to be a very difficult race for many Melrosians. There's 5 ably qualified candidates, and we have an opportunity that we haven't had in 18 years. This is the first time that the mayor's office is open. I think I bring a unique set of skills. I'm not a career politician. I've worked in the private sector. I have public experience in the sense that I've been on the Board of Aldermen for 4 years and even led it in 2018 as its president. But I also come to it with a private sector background. And I want to look at the things that we do right in this community and try to improve them. I want to look at the things that we do wrong and try to improve them. I don't have anything to lose in terms of the decisions I'm going to make. I want to be mayor. I don't need to be mayor. I want to be mayor. And it's important to me because I have seen, as I mentioned, the community here. And with all the opportunities, when we're talking about either economic development, improving our schools, the way in which we're going to educate our children, how our community is going to look 10, 15 years from now, I think that I bring a perspective that will help lead this community. And I know that I can't do it alone. I'm going to need the help of the school committee. I'm going to need the help of the Board of Aldermen. I'm going to need the help from past mayors. I'm going to need the help from residents. But I want us all to be involved in it. And I want to help lead and make this community even better than it can be.
This has been your host, Theodoros Kiros for African Ascent.